Good evening. Welcome to our second concert on the Common. And I can see that the band and the orchestra, they have a very loyal following, a great audience. On behalf of the Cultural Council, I'd like to welcome you to our second concert. Just so you save next Thursday and the Thursday after that, on July 31st, we're going to have, this is a new band of Sutton, the Bad News Jazz and Blues Orchestra. And then on August 7th, it's a rock and roll band, Far From Eden. They've been here before. So mark your calendars, it's going to be a great time. Please follow us on Facebook. We also have links on the Town of Sutton website. There's information there about our concerts. These little cards here, our information surveys are very important. We have some on the table there. There's plenty of pens. We would respectfully request that you fill them out and respond to us. In August and September, the grant application season opens for all the various organizations and music groups that want to apply for Cultural Council grants. And in the November-December timeframe, we have to decide. We just received an announcement from Senator Fatman that our grant allocation for next year has been increased to $10,000. So we're quite thrilled with that, and that's fantastic. So it's important that we hear from you in terms of what you want, and it doesn't have to be just music. We branched out a little bit this year for some art, and we're trying to maybe get some drama in and some other things like that. So use your imagination and apply generously. The council membership, we're always looking for new members, especially when it comes time in the fall when we have to vote to decide how we divide up that $10,000. So the more the merrier in terms of figuring out how to do that. Tonight you're in for a treat. I'm not going to give away the thunder because I know what you're doing and I'm very excited about it. So let's give a good round of applause for the Blackstone Valley Council.
Good evening and welcome to the gazebo here in Sutton. We may be one of the only groups that you see this summer that actually doesn't use the gazebo, but we're a pretty big ensemble, so we need to spread out onto the lawn here. At this time, I would like you to stand if you are able, direct your attention to the flag as we play our national anthem. Goodwin. I'm president of the band, and I'm proud to be marshaling this musical spectacle featuring the wide world of marches. Today's program is a cavalcade of cultures and countries told through song. But this isn't just a boring old foot slog rumbling along at 2/4 time. No, you'll hear music that's lyrical, bombastic, stirring, and majestic, adding some pep to your step and joy in your heart. So please join me in welcoming our musical director and today's field commander, who also just happens to be the middle and high school band director right here in Sutton, Mr. Justin Falvo and the Blackstone Valley Community Concert Band. Thank you. That was the Commando March by renowned composer Samuel Barber. Barber had joined the U.S. Army Air Corps in 1942, amidst his growing musical career. The Commando March was his first completed work after his military induction, and his only work written exclusively for concert band. Moving right along to our next piece, written by English composer Gustav Holst in 1909. Holst's Suite No. 1 in E-flat for military band was considered a revolutionary piece because it was one of the first written exclusively for wind bands, like the one seated here. As is true in much of his music, Holst incorporates several British folk tunes within this piece. The composition consists of 3 movements: the chaconne, the intermezzo, and, in keeping with tonight's theme, the finale march. This is Holst's Suite No. 1 in E-flat for military band. That was quite a piece, and it featured quite a few solo performances and sectional performances that I'd like to recognize. First of all, leading that song right off in the chaconne was our beautiful low brass section. So well done, low brass. And they are beautiful, every single one of them. Clarinet solo was played by Jillian Falvo. Trumpet solos throughout this piece were played by Freddie Ramos. I've been told many times by the oboes that they have a very difficult part, so I'd like to recognize Brian Beninati and Alicia Sarasoli. Everyone's laughing except them. Bass clarinet has an important part. Sutton's own Hayden Town. In addition to their part in the low brass section, the chaconne featured a solo by Neil Stanley in the euphonium section. And then the intermezzo by Doug Wright, also in the euphonium section. Piccolo solo, yes, there's still more. Piccolo solo was played by Melina Garland. There was a French horn solo played by Holly wait, what? Has it been Jess all season playing the piccolo solo? Oh, okay. There's a second flute solo, I've been told, just now. I've been saying the same speech all season. No one's mentioned it. Not directly to me. Jessica Carrera in the flute section has played a great flute solo. French horn solo played by my fellow Woonsocket Villanovan, Holly Begnosh. Saxophone solo played by Elizabeth Jannery. Any others that I missed that I haven't said all season? Because the last one is probably the most famous bass drum solo in all of concert band literature, and that was played tonight by Mr. Aaron Holmberg. We now travel across the Atlantic to Scandinavia for our next piece, the celebrated Valdres March. Composer Johan Hansen was a Norwegian bandmaster of the Oslo Military Band for 20 years. This march celebrates the stunning Valdres region and is based on the signature fanfare of the Valdres Battalion, as well as a folk fiddle tune from Norway. This is the Valdres March. And that was Diane Lockwood on the clarinet solo. And me on the trumpet. Yay! Our next piece is a screaming circus march by Carl L. King, who was performing with the Barnum and Bailey Circus Band in 1913. His march, Barnum and Bailey's Favorite, became King's most famous march, as well as the theme music of the circus. Carl King was a baritone horn player himself, and one of this piece's highlights is its lively part for baritone horn, or euphonium. Hold on to your trapeze and top hats for Barnum and Bailey's Favorite. Wow, blink and you'll miss that one. I'm going to give the band a moment to come down from that high wire act and tell you a bit more about our band. You know, there are many ubiquitous acronyms that have become words unto themselves. Think of words like SCUBA, self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. Or AWOL, away without leave. Or TUBA, which actually is an acronym. It stands for Thick, Undeniably Big Appliance. Did you know that, Adam? It's a fact. You heard it here. And of course, one word that I would like to become a ubiquitous word in everyone's vocabulary, Bvccb, which of course is Bvccb, or the Blackstone Valley Community Concert Band. Bvccb rolls right off the tongue. Well, all right, I relent. The Bvccb is composed of talented musicians from throughout the Blackstone Valley and beyond. We are a non-profit organization. We are free to join, performances are free, and the instrumentalists you see before you are volunteers. Shout out goes to the Uxbridge School Department and Open Sky in Whitensville for providing our rehearsal space, and to all of you for supporting the arts in our communities. Our summer concert series is supported in part by a grant from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, by individual and corporate donations, the fundraising efforts of our membership, and Cultural Council grants from towns throughout the Blackstone Valley, including right here in Sutton. We love and appreciate all of the support we receive from the aforementioned groups, yet that still just scratches the surface of funding the monumental effort made to help share our passion with you. If you would like to donate to the BVCCB, it's very simple. Just go to bvccbmusic.org and click the donate button, and that will link to our nonprofit Venmo portal. You can also come say hi and get a little closer to the band and scan that little QR code right down in front of me, and that also brings you right to our Venmo donation portal. And thank you once again for your support. We end the first third of our program of the show by honoring our country's armed forces. The Armed Forces Salute is a tribute to the men and women who are serving and who have served in our armed forces. The piece includes the Caisson Song, Semper Paratus, the Marines Hymn, the U.S. Air Force, and Anchors Aweigh. We invite active and retired and veteran service members and their families to please stand to be recognized when your branch's song is played. Thank you very much. We're going to take a bit of an intermission, set up for our second of three halves. That's right, you're getting a free half of music tonight. So give us about 10 minutes to set up, mill around, visit Paul at the desk, and we'll see you in a moment for, again, the second half of three halves of the show. All right, thank you everyone for indulging us as we get this little reset going. As you can see, there are some ensembles presented before you, and for those with a keen eye, you may have noticed that our band director, Justin Falvo, had a real battle with a table saw that he lost, unfortunately, and his hand is none the better for it. So we have a few small ensembles, a brass quintet right in front of me, a flute ensemble on the other side there, and a clarinet ensemble as well, who have all been practicing in preparation for a concert on Sunday at Riverbend Park in Uxbridge. So if you like what you see here, this is just a small sample of our full concert at Riverbend, Uxbridge at 2 o'clock. So we'd love to see each and every one of you there, including members of the band. We'd love to see you. So we're going to spell Justin a little bit, give him a chance to rest that tender hand, and perform a few pieces from each of our ensembles. First up is going to be our brass quintet. We're going to play three pieces for you today. First is a piece called You Are the New Day by a Welsh composer, John David. Our arrangement is based on the popular choral version by Peter Knight, performed by the King's Singers. We'll then follow that up with a traditional Scottish folk song called the Sky Boat Song, which fans of the Outlander TV show may recognize it as the theme music from that show. But it's a folk song recounting the escape of the Bonnie Prince Charlie after defeat at the Battle of Culloden. And then finally, we'll play a tune I think you'll recognize. Well, I'll leave it as a surprise, but I think it fits with the theme of reaching across oceans, across seas, to connect with one another. So this is officially the Bvccb Brass Quintet. Our next group to perform will be our flute choir, organized by Stacia LaRiviere. They'll be playing a selection of 3 tunes: the Minuet by Boccherini, Pure Imagination from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and the Allegretto by Clara Schumann. I want to give special thanks for the rehearsal space provided by the Sullivan Group of Better Living Real Estate in Blackstone for offering the flute choir their rehearsal space. Take it away, Stacia. Thank you, flute choir. If you notice, flutes of all shapes and sizes. They come in many different sizes. So, and they were all put to good use in that ensemble group. So well done. Finally, our clarinet ensemble, who's actually been rehearsing all year, even during the fall and spring seasons. And they are organized by Andrew Duncan Emmons. Yay, Andrew, there he is. They'll be playing a selection including of 3 tunes. Jambo by Paul Bassler, Shenandoah by Frank Tikelli, and Molly on the Shore by Percy Granger. That one's just dedicated to Justin, Granger's biggest fan. I just want to extend a thanks to Diane Lockwood, who's also a member of the Clarinet Ensemble, for opening up her home for summer rehearsal space, as well as Uxbridge High School during the school year, who allows them to come in a little early to do their rehearsals. So this is the Clarinet Ensemble. Thank you. by the brass quintet, the flute choir, and clarinet ensemble. If you'd like to see more of that, we have a concert this Sunday at Riverbend in Uxbridge, Riverbend Park in Uxbridge. All three of the ensembles will be playing an extended program, so please come out at 2 o'clock to Riverbend and see us there. We're going to take our second brief intermission so we can reset the band and come back for the second half. I do want to announce that in my little walkabout around the park while these groups were playing, I did find some Samsung earbuds, and I left them at the base of the flagpole, so if you are the owner of a pair of Samsung earbuds, that's where they are, so don't panic. One of John Philip Sousa's most performed works, Hands Across the Sea, is a march addressed to no particular nation, but to all of America's friends abroad. We think it's the perfect piece to connect the music from around the world to us right here today. Please welcome our associate conductor, Mr. George Pro, to the podium to conduct the March Kings' Hands Across the Sea. March of the Belgian Paratroopers was written by Pierre Leemans, who served in the Belgian military during World War II. Leemans began the march during World War II but completed it after the war, incorporating themes from his earlier work at the request of paratroopers. The music takes the form of a patrol, giving the impression of a parade quietly approaching from a distance, building to a full sound as it passes, and softens again as it moves away. Please welcome back George to conduct March of the Belgian Paratroopers. Thank you, George. When he's not performing with our group, you may find George on parade or at Civil War reenactments around Rhode Island with the Providence Brigade Band, a period-specific ensemble performing the music of the Civil War era, complete with uniforms and instruments from the late 19th century. Next, we return to the States for the final few pieces of our show. Henry Fillmore, who was the conductor of his own 24-member professional band in Cincinnati, performed a very popular series of concerts at the Cincinnati Zoo, a venue surprisingly conducive to presenting new music. At one performance, a new but untitled work premiered to a warm reception and instantaneous success. However, Fillmore had difficulty titling the work. In early performances, it went simply by The Cincinnati Zoo. When the work was published in 1929, it was under the title we know, Americans We, and is dedicated to all of us. Please welcome back Justin Falvo to conduct Americans We. That's the It's Getting Dark tempo. In New Orleans, there is a tradition of honoring lost loved ones that is both solemn and joyful. Known as jazz funerals, these are musical processions that shift from somber to celebratory. The procession's first line, or immediate family, clergy, and brass band, begins with the playing of a slow, mournful dirge as it marches from the church or funeral home to the cemetery. Once the body's interred, the music transitions to more upbeat, celebratory tunes, and mourners, including second-liners, which are extended family, onlookers, and really anyone else who wants to join, are encouraged to dance and enjoy the procession. Just a Closer Walk with Thee is a traditional gospel and jazz standard, and possibly the most frequently played number in New Orleans jazz funerals, beginning with the slow, melancholic melody that gives way to an exuberant celebration of life. It includes solos for clarinet, trumpet, and trombone for a very classic Dixieland band quality. This is Just a Closer Walk with Thee. Lockwood on clarinet, Nate Weiner on trumpet, Devlin Danner on trombone, and Jeff Ellis on the drum set. Thank you once again for having us here today and for joining us on this musical journey. We hope to see you one more time at Uxbridge at Riverbend Farm. And we're going to end our concert, as we do all of our summer concerts, with our national march. Here's Stars and Stripes Forever. Thank you so much, Sutton, for having us. Have a wonderful rest of your summer. Enjoy your concert series here in the Common. It's really a wonderful venue. Thanks again.